Hey, Caitlin. Thanks for doing the session with me. This is our CSDM and product sessions. I, uh, I am the product manager for CSDM. And Caitlin, what's your title role here?
Yeah, hi Mark. I'm the product manager for digital portfolio management, and I also own products called Service Portfolio Management and Service Builder.
Awesome. Yeah, we just did the service builder session last time. This is going to be a continuation of that kind of series that we started on, and we're going to cover DPM today, which was one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks so much for having me back. This will be a great session. I hope that it gives customers a lot of value.
Sure it will. And one of the things about the name, it's kind of a broad name, digital portfolio management. Maybe we want to explain a little bit backstory, how we got here, and what is a digital portfolio anyway?
No, it's a good point. And I tell you what, there's very few things harder than naming something, at least for me. And so I was part of the naming committee, but I don't know if I added a ton of great input there.
Yeah.
The reason why we landed on digital portfolio is kind of this concept around having I'm going to try not to use the word portfolio over and over again, but basically a grouping of things that somebody owns and manages like collectively. So we did a lot of research that led to this product. And one of the main initiations, which you were at the forefront of, Mark, was really what's this kind of overlapping connection between application portfolio management and service portfolio management and the key roles within that, namely the people who own those apps and services. And I mean, I don't know about you, but in owning service portfolio management, I would get so many questions from customers about, what's the difference between service portfolio and application portfolio management? When does it make sense to do one versus the other? Should I do them both? How do they like build upon each other? What are the roles that are involved and how are they related? And so this research, I think, really helped to provide some clarity specifically related to the key roles of, someone who owns services and apps.
Yeah. And I kind of grew up in the application space, right? In the APM space, I was the product manager for that product as when it came out originally 6 years ago now, boy. But it was we had the same questions, like what's the difference between an application and a service? And both coexisting on the platform gave us a unique opportunity to kind of bring them together. And there's a few things that are kind of doing that. No, one, we're on the same platform, so why not? Kind of like we could do it. And the second thing is that we're seeing this focus of product teams that own both. They own the application construction and planning and all that, but they also own the experience for all the consumers. They own the service, and they currently had to implement two tools and see them in two completely different places because there's no place to see them together or maybe bind them together in a way to say, here's the app and service I own.
Absolutely, exactly. And, when we talk to different folks, I mean, regardless of terminology, because I think you probably know this better than anybody, when you say service, it can mean an app to someone else. And so
Yeah.
those words and in product, it becomes all very interchangeable. And so one thing that was so great is with the CSDM, we can really ground ourselves in the definitions that have been outlined within those white papers and within that data model and best practice. So when we went in and we talked to end users or people who would consider themselves an owner or very deeply responsible for something, so often, like you said, it's not just the app, but it's also the service. And I mean, with ServiceNow, we talked to a few of our they would call themselves a service owner, but they are listed as the IT app owner related to a service that's being delivered.
Yeah.
So it's kind of marrying these two different sides, but the way that we were solving for them was so disconnected and was so separate.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the worlds are converging, and that's kind of the exciting thing about why I'm here at ServiceNow too, because I see this opportunity to do things differently than what we've done historically. Having the service management world being completely different, and separated from the app development world. So DevOps basically realized here on the platform.
Yes, exactly. I feel like ServiceNow is really well positioned to help basically solve for this persona
Yeah.
and for some of these challenges. And so yeah, so DPM was really born out of that research.
Yeah.
And the main goal of DPM was to provide a place for an owner who, again, kind of going back to that initial question around portfolios, who owns a combination of services and applications
Yeah.
that kind of come together to deliver an outcome, or that are so interrelated that if one is impacted or if one isn't working, then the other spectrum or the other end of what they're delivering becomes affected as well. And so trying to, again, bring these different things together and visualize them more holistically and collectively. So that's kind of the reason why we named it digital portfolio management. Well, and first of all, DPM, we delivered it as a store app.
Yeah.
So you could find it on the store, and we wanted to make it as accessible to anyone as possible. So customers who have an ITSM standard, a formerly ITBM or now an SPM standard license, or an application portfolio APM license. If you have one of those modern licenses or SKUs, you will have access to DPM on the store.
Okay. Okay. So it does, you do have to have a certain SKU in order to get to this.
That's right.
Yeah, one of those. Okay. Cool.
Yes, and we do rely, quite heavily on performance analytics. So if you have standard, you won't have quite as much, visibility and flexibility that you get with a pro license, of course, but we do offer DPM with standard. So I like to call that out.
Okay.
And then within here, you can kind of see we have a pretty light, like we pull in, of course, business applications. We also pull in services, and that includes application services. I think we show it here related with the business app. But then we also have portfolios, and there's two kind of key types of portfolios we surface at the moment. Enterprise portfolios, which right now are represented by service portfolios, and I can kind of show that in the product. And then also this concept of a personal portfolio, which was like newly introduced with DPM. And then to access the workspace, you can click here, or if you're using our next experience, we have it within this little drop down. So you can click here. I'm logged in as an admin. So you can also kind of see some admin things here and KPI group stuff, which we can talk a little bit about. But the main role is actually a DPM manager role. And so once somebody has that role and they log in, they will actually see, this is a sample user, Jose Hamilton, for us. So we'll just impersonate him, and I'll just kind of show you what it looks like. Then when Jose is logged in, he can come here to his workspace, click on digital portfolio management, and this is his homepage.
Got it.
You'll have to bear with us a little bit because this is a demo instance, so some of the data isn't that accurate, and all of that. So
No problem. I mean, I'm more interested in the functionality, and of course, demo data is always never great, but we do what we can.
That's right. That's right. So if I'm logged in with that DPM manager role, I see things that need attention here on the homepage. The two main use cases are, is there something kind of blowing up in my ecosystem or related to things that I own or that I am dependent on? And then also giving quick links into things that they have created for themselves, like a personal portfolio, if they know something they want to go look at. We also, again, have this enterprise portfolio, so we have a quick link to go look at the enterprise portfolios here. One quick note is for the needs attention. So here we surface different kinds of records. We can surface changes, critical incidents, outages, audits, risks. These are things that we ship out of the box, but this can be edited or added to, we use the contextual search framework. So this is very flexible. to pull in data that's, relevant for, your organization's particular needs and what these owners are responsible for. So I wanted to call that out. The other nice thing is it's actually kind of based on the personal portfolio. So in our demo data, Jose Hamilton, he's listed like directly in the owned by field of services and offerings. And then, if he's also registered as an IT application owner, we will pull things automatically based on his being an owner of a service or an offering or a business application or even an application service. But then if he creates personal portfolios, anything that he puts in there, we will also surface those or like any critical issues related to those items. Because if he's added it to his personal portfolio, it likely means that he cares about it and that he wants to know when something's going on.
Got it.
Which is kind of nice because sometimes you have more than one person who's like kind of responsible for that particular solution being delivered or portfolio being delivered.
Right. So here you can get to all your stuff and can configure it based on your own personal needs.
Exactly. And then this is the first time that, Jose Hamilton is logging in. So he doesn't have a personal portfolio. But one thing that we did create is when he clicks on this module on the left here that says personal portfolios, we actually will automatically create a personal portfolio for him if he is listed as an owner of a service or an offering or a business application.
Okay.
So we pull this together as kind of a starting point so that the person doesn't start with nothing. But if they aren't registered as like the quote owned by or IT app owner persona, they can really easily create their own personal portfolio.
Right.
So I'd love to kind of walk through that quickly.
Okay.
So when Jose clicks on that button, we open this page. He can give it a name. So it could be like my team's portfolio, and he can add a description if he wants. Here he can add editors and viewers. So I would like to kind of call out the fact that editing means editing the portfolio. So these fields and what is in the portfolio in this add items step. It doesn't mean access to edit the actual records themselves of what's in the portfolio.
So they just have visibility on stuff, not changing the stuff itself. Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's, concerns around different, ACLs and rules of like who can edit what. And so we don't overwrite anything. This is just related to the portfolio itself. And then viewers means the person can look at the portfolio, but they can't edit it. And so the nice thing is if you have a team or if you have multiple people who are contributing to the delivery of this particular portfolio and the services and the apps that are in it, you can really quickly and pretty easily, add folks here in that way.
Right. Okay.
And then on the next page, this is where you can add what you want to put into the portfolio. And so again, like we mentioned, you can create a portfolio that includes your services, your apps, your app services, and create, again, like not just what what you're kind of building out, but also what you're supporting, giving that more kind of holistic view.
Yeah. Now, are these portfolios kind of like a folder structure on your hard drive, and you can create multiples, or like a portfolio of portfolios, so to speak, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. You can create as many as you want, and you can always edit them, and they're specific to you. So it's not going to disrupt anyone else's portfolios. So you can add this IT service management business app to as many portfolios as you want, and then someone else can also add that to as many portfolios as they want. It's very flexible in that way.
Okay.
So if I do, for example, if I grab this one and I add it, so I did add Marshall as someone who's on my portfolio team, and then here with my services and offerings, I can also search. So the nice thing would be like if I search for my name in the owned by, here I can see all the stuff that I own.
Got it.
One other thing that we did was we made it so this can be personalized. So if you want to edit what columns are shown, this is nice because then you can also search within the column, or you can filter the column if these columns aren't satisfactory for what you're looking for.
Right. Whatever you want to search for. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I'm trying to find a good example of some services that we could look at. So these are pretty good from a data perspective. So I'll add the service in these two offerings. Again, you can see here that relationship. And then let me add these, and then we can look for an application service. Oh, okay. For
No data there. Yeah.
This instance isn't updated with that. So we do include app services, but again, the demo data might not be perfect on this instance.
Mm-hmm.
When I go and review the portfolio here, then I can see what I've added to it. And this is the same flow that someone would use if they want to edit it, which is nice. So I can see the details that I added. I can see what I've brought in here, and then I can go ahead and I can just create that portfolio. And it's as simple as that, which is nice. It's easy, it's quick. And then, you can see what you've created. And then this is also a place that you could share, or again, very easy to edit.
Okay. So if I'm like a manager of a group, I can create the portfolio that the whole group should be able to see and manage, share it, and now they can see it too.
Exactly.
All right.
And you can see things that need attention. So we also brought this from similar feature that we had on the homepage.
Got it.
And now if we jump in, we can actually look at a particular solution type. So we kind of use the word solution to represent any like CI type that you would manage within DPM, of course. And so for this example with business applications, and for whatever reason, we're not seeing our roadmap tile, but for business apps, you can notice we have our heading here, we have key metadata, and then we have these tabs, and these tabs are consistent. And this whole layout is consistent. So the other nice thing that we did was we tried to bring consistency to how we view different types of solutions. So services will look very similar to how business applications look. And the reason is that we wanted it to make sense of where someone would go to find a certain type of information, and to treat these things more consistently versus, again, having them solved for and visualized and managed in very different ways, which is kind of difficult for this user then to have to try to go back and forth between two very different experiences.
Yeah, this kind of harkens on one of the things that we talked about a long time ago around this whole product centricity. And what if services and applications were treated the same way and they were a quote unquote digital product? And yeah, this kind of bridges that gap where you're enforcing that consistency, so to speak, to consider like the app team would a lot of times not consider the runtime stuff, right? Or vice versa. A service manager doesn't understand or consider what's coming next in the next version and in the build. But we're kind of presenting all of that for both sides of the equation, right? Services and apps here.
Exactly. That's definitely the idea. And it's not perfect, but we're a good starting point, and we'll continue to kind of mature and evolve it.
Yeah, and I'm just curious because I mean from my history of being an APM, for example, I mean I know a lot of customers had both on the platform. What are you seeing? Are you seeing most customers do have both apps and services, and they're trying to manage them together like this?
That's a really good question. I think it varies pretty widely. And the interesting thing is, which you may have a deeper understanding of even than I do, but it seems like there are different sort of teams that are involved in each of the practices, so to speak. So
Yeah.
you kind of have your service delivery teams or your service management teams, and they think about the services that are provided and how they're provided and the processes that are driving that and who's responsible for what. And then you also will have, your APM side, like, your enterprise architects and the people who own the applications themselves. And so sometimes I'm talking to one group or the other, where both would benefit, right, from looking at DPM more holistically and having them brought together. So I think those conversations are happening more now. I will say that typically when I talk to folks, it's kind of from the service management side of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I sit within the IT service management, business unit technically. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's also how conversations are funneling through.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it does. I mean, I tend to talk to both almost all the time. And it's interesting when you get both the developers and enterprise architects as well as the service folks in the same room. This really resonates.
mhm.
It's like we're not talking about apples and oranges anymore. We're all talking about fruit. We're all on the same page.
Yes. Definitely. And I do kind of get one of the initial value adds that we weren't expecting, but we've been hearing from people, from customers, and even from our own like solutioning folks, is that this product is helping to visualize that and tell that story in a way that we had a difficult time doing before. Like it was
Yeah.
there. It's not like we built all this brand new functionality. Like this stuff existed. We're bringing the pieces together and we're
We're
trying to
just
tell that story.
Yeah, we're just showing it all together, which traditionally we haven't done. We've been in different product teams, different business units, catering to separate audiences. Now they're kind of mixed together now. They're like all in the same room, so to speak.
Exactly. And so it's
Yeah,
like easier to have that conversation when you can
yeah.
actually point to something and see it versus it having been a little more abstract, or you have to try to draw something on a whiteboard to get people aligned, and all
Oh
talking in
yeah.
the same way.
Yep.
So yeah, so this seems to be helping with some of those conversations because I think people really want to get there, and a lot of folks are, of course. So it is a spectrum,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll keep going. I didn't want to detract you, but I think that was a good summary for me, at least on the context. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very good questions. And yeah, so for the plan tab, one thing that's not showing up in this instance at the moment is we also have a tile that represents the roadmap. So we have a link into the alignment planner workspace where you can visualize roadmaps and actually build them out. So it's really nice to be able to then see and manage the roadmaps and have access to it from, your applications, from your services, from your offerings. We also surface a summary of data related to planning. And then we have this build tab that represents some of the things that are currently in flight. Now, this has been challenging from like a terminology perspective in some ways, because build has such a strong connotation with, like DevOps and Agile and seeing commits and stories and releases, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And we are starting to build that out actually right now, much more with the DevOps team. We just released a DevOps, basically like data alignment within DPM. So we surface key DevOps data for business applications. That's part of our most recent release, our 3.0 DPM version, which is
Hmm.
compatible with Tokyo. Or I should say it's built on Tokyo. So if you have San Diego, it won't be available yet. But once you get, to Tokyo, then you can access that. But we're also basically saying anything, or the way we're thinking about this is anything that is being worked on, that you are actively working towards related to your business application or your service or your offering, it's almost like a tracking. So we're going to show you the status of it. We're going to tell you what is actually being worked on, and then try to highlight anything that the owner may want to pay attention to. Are there key missed milestones, or are there critical issues? I need to focus on that. I'm going to dive in and I'm going to learn more. So these are all clickable to drill down to the list of those projects, and then actually like getting to the project record itself. And then we do pull in, Agile 2.0 data as well. So if you're using Agile, you can see your epics, your stories, sprints, and releases. And then we do also pull in some change data as well.
Cool. So
On the
everything
rest,
the build team is basically doing, we can surface against that business application. And is that true for services, or is that there's some maybe some of that is there, or not all of it?
yeah, great. So it's really, we just have the projects and we
Hmm.
have changes, and then we do also have continual improvements. So
Yeah. Yeah.
within ITSM, we have that continual improvement management, which is like a lightweight project management tool. So we
Right.
do also pull that in. I like to say, like, we're trying to show the art of the possible. So it's very
Yeah.
likely that you're not using both projects and continual improvements.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to say you're likely not using projects and epics, but I'm kind of walking that back now, having talked to folks, because a lot of times like bigger initiatives might be managed through a project, and there may be epics or stories or tasks that are done kind of in the vein of that project.
Yep.
So what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide, again, more that holistic picture into what's being worked on.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag out there. Teams aren't going to do one or the other. They're usually going to do multiple things at the same time, and that's where, the flexibility, being able to kind of bring it together at least, so you can see it all, no matter what you're doing. I think that's the real power here.
Exactly. So that's the idea. I will show you what we did introduce to try to make it a little bit easier to like configure this. So if you aren't using projects, you can simply hide them, and I'll show you how we introduced that. But I'll just quickly kind of go through the rest of these. So with the Run tab, this is where we pull in data related to like the operation side of things. The interesting thing is we've gotten a lot of like kind of questions, and I wouldn't say pushback necessarily, but confusion around why we're surfacing this kind of data against a business application where, maybe it should be actually against the service. And the long and the short answer is, when we talk to customers, people are in so many different places, in terms of how aligned they are with the common services data model, what journey they're on, what they've licensed, how they think about what they provide and how they run those things and those processes. And so we didn't want to make it so impossible to actually use our product where you had to work in such a specific way, that we wanted there to be some flexibility. So for those customers that we spoke with who are more application oriented, and they're looking at their business apps and they have their app services, what we wanted to do is we wanted to surface that key data that they would be tracking at the app service level, or even if they're opening it directly against the business app, we do still provide that option. So we try to make these widgets like kind of as flexible as possible. And we're continuing to evolve that, right? Like what our model is. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I think, how I see it is that services and applications need to look almost identical eventually, and then they will be one eventually, because you're now talking about the same thing. So whether it's an app or a service, or it doesn't really matter anymore. You're just looking at incidents regardless, right? You're looking at deployments regardless, and then of course customer experience. So, or risks, right? All of the information that is around it doesn't really matter anymore. This is what matters: how many incidents are open against the thing, whatever app, service, or even device, if you want to go there. But that's the idea.
Yeah, exactly. So we do, like you mentioned, like deployments, we will be ultimately, I think, relabeling this to application services, because again, introducing, more of that DevOps language, and deployment means something different. So we want to be really clear that these are the application services that are related to this business application. And we also have the technology risk by deployment. So this is a key feature within the APM space. So we do surface that, and you can change the deployment over here to see what the risks are. And then of course, drill down and view those actual risk records.
Awesome. Yeah. And one thing about those deployments, which is interesting, is we've struggled with that name app service for a long time. You called it deployments here. Other people call them app instances, app stack. There's a lot of different names for this thing. What we're looking at in CSDM is to go to what we're calling system. This is the system, and all of the underlying things are part of it, right? Which is what the app service is all about, and from a service mapping point of view. But system tends to be a much easier way to communicate what that app service really means.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, that it is confusing to people because it's like a service, but it's, very closely tied to the business application. And so, it does, I think, cause some confusion. And again, for especially this persona that we expect to use this product, they're likely not going to be versed in the CSDM, all the nitty-gritty terminology and what does this mean. They call their stuff whatever they call it. They might call
Yeah.
everything a service. They may call everything an app, or they call everything a product. They don't know what table it lives in. And so
No. And they
we did
shouldn't
have a lot
care.
of
They
trouble.
shouldn't care,
Totally, exactly.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of trouble with, what do we call stuff? How do we
Yeah.
make it clear? How do we avoid confusion where people are like, I don't know what table this lives in. I just call
Yeah.
it this. This is the name of my thing. And so again, I don't think we got it perfect, but we tried our best, and we'll keep getting feedback and trying to refine it so it does work really well for that
Yep.
that persona.
Yeah, we're bringing it together. I mean, that's the hard part. We're starting. It's like if you get married and you start living together for the first time, you're kind of having to adjust to your partner.
Right.
So that's how I like to think about it.
It's so true. Absolutely. Okay, so then I'll go to the next tab here. We have this risk tab. So this is where we're pulling in the governance, risk, and compliance. Again, this is through that linkage with APM and GRC. And then the last tab is this info tab, which we pull in key data from the record. You can see we would link any like business capabilities. We'll show you what personal portfolios it's in. We have the contract, business unit strategy, goals, and then that important information object record list. We also have this view relationships, which is pretty cool. So I want to show that, but I guess before I do, I could cover the rest of it. So similarly, we have the needs attention, which works the same as it does throughout the rest of the product, but it's specific to this business app.
Yeah.
We have contacts. So we can surface like who owns it, or who's the team that supports it or is related to working on it. Anybody that could be a good point of contact for this particular entity.
Right.
And then we have these create options. So in this case, you might want to create a demand. The idea here is like continual improvement, right? So we do want to surface more action, and we want to drive more action from DPM. We started more with visualizing data. And as we mature this, we want to learn more of like what is the right level of action to take versus in another product, where we can have like strategic linkages into other places to take those key actions. And so this is kind of a work in progress, but one thing we started with was being able to create a demand. So based on anything you see, risk related, run data related, or even processes around build, maybe you want to create a demand to improve any aspect of that. So it's really trying to get back into that continual improvement loop.
Right. Makes perfect sense.
And then if we jump into relationships really quick, so this is intended to show really like that CSDM view. Again, we're a little bit limited with how much we can show and how we can visualize it, just with how this component works, frankly. So not to bore everybody with all the little details, but you have to kind of map from top to bottom or from side to side. And so the approach that we've taken is showing like up and down relationships. So we would also show the business capability, of course, and then if the business app is related to another business app, from a kind of parent-child or dependency relationship, we would show that, and then we show the application services.
Yeah.
And then one of the big things, of course, everybody wants to know, like, what is this business app related to from a service point of view? So
Yeah.
a lot of customers want to see, like, I want to see the service on this view. We couldn't figure out how to do that technically. So what we did do is we said, okay, we will allow customers to be able to like kind of redraw this map from different nodes. So for this app service, what we can do is we can redraw this relationship map from that app service. And unfortunately, this is not showing, or this isn't built out to show it.
Yeah, no data there. Yeah.
You could see the offering too.
Okay.
Yes. So we do try to show that, because this really is like a linchpin in the CSDM model.
Yeah, as you know, the CSDM kind of maps it all out. So if you did have a full data set, you can travel or traverse around it and see things from any point of view, right? So that's the idea.
Exactly. And then if I pop back really quick, I'm just going to show a service offering, for example, just so you can get a sense of that we're maintaining that consistency
Hmm.
with the layout, view relationships. We have this, again, the create buttons. The main difference I would say is kind of on this run tab. And one of the reasons for those differences is related to the like the SLAs that are
Yeah,
associated with services.
yeah,
And so what those commitments are. And then also we have this feature called KPI groups, and for whatever reason, my instance is being very slow. But I can show you different metrics how we can surface, again, kind of related to that service delivery side of things. And it's something we are wanting to introduce to the business application. So the option to create more flexible reporting. So that's something
yeah.
that's coming. But here, for example, we can see, different KPIs, different metrics, different types of, again, service related data for your offerings. And then we do
Nice.
link application service dependencies. So trying to bring that visibility so we can traverse to the business app.
Yep.
And then here we also show availability commitments and service level agreement commitments and reporting on that. So
Cool.
I do apologize, just the data isn't that great.
No, no, that's fine. Yeah, I think that I get the gist here, and the fact that you're bringing all the data related, because if you're doing change management, or tracking incidents, you're able to see all that and the metrics over time, how you're performing against your commitments, and whatever those SLAs, OLAs happen to be.
Exactly. Yes. And we do have this other module that I mentioned, enterprise portfolios. And so
Yeah.
here's where we get into the service portfolio. Now, I mentioned this actually in our service builder conversation, where
Yeah.
we're starting with service portfolios. The main reason is that we do have this kind of hierarchy of reporting that's flexible based on however customers organize their or think about how they organize their services. So we are going to introduce this for business applications as well. And then I think eventually even app services. And when we're moving into that more digital product space, having that open up for digital products as well. And so the idea would be, you can use this to create very flexible portfolios of whatever you want eventually. And then, this is a service and it kind of rolls up. And so you can get this reporting at each level. And really the difference between the enterprise and the personal portfolios is enterprise portfolios are like, this is how our organization thinks and delivers something. Like these are all the services that we deliver, or these are all the IT services we deliver. And it's a shared understanding of what is delivered and how it's delivered.
Yep.
Whereas a personal portfolio is more of like, here are all the things that I own and I care about and I want to see and manage together.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I've been talking to people about is really, how do I structure those enterprise portfolios to account for all business applications and all services, regardless of how they're consumed, but have a way of structuring them so I understand sort of let's say the stuff used by employees, which is different than the stuff that's used by customers, or the stuff that's used by my manufacturing teams, right? There's different, I would say, investments and outcomes. And when you're dealing with, KPIs coming from your product portfolio that you sell, that's a very different thing than what it means for bad KPIs coming from employees or even your manufacturing. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So the idea is to have that more flexible approach with the taxonomy structure that we do have.
yeah,
But it is a much more, I would say, like official
it's a
portfolio.
standard official
Yes,
portfolio structure that everybody now. So for like executive reporting, this would be used in that kind of activity.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's why I think it brings that service world and application world together nicely here, because I think the struggle was, like an app TCO versus service experience metrics. There was no way to bring those kind of things together in one way, but here we can do that. We can kind of talk about the same thing in the same portfolio.
Yeah, so we're, again, this is just services now, but that's the vision, of
Yeah.
course. And we are actively working towards that. So hopefully we'll have some good news to share, soon. I'm not going to promise anything, but
No, that's cool. I mean,
yeah.
it is kind of converging at that official portfolio kind of level. And I've talked to the PPM folks before, and there is an app portfolio too. Um, and so, we've got lots of ways of structuring or managing the stuff that we're talking about, but not one that's used, quote unquote, enterprise wide,
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the flexibility to say, I want to organize this, like, what you were talking about, by consumers or by
Yeah.
organizational structure or by a particular outcome or teams, there's all these different ways that you can do that. And so this would be a way to do that where you can really create any type of a structure that you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then our last module is the like lists. It's just another way to access the same information that's kind of throughout the product. You can create your own lists, of course, and again, just kind of find things that way too. So this is just sort of the higher level approach with DPM and the different things that you can do and view with it.
Yeah.
And then I'm hoping what we could do is talk about, because this is a question I get all the time, and this is where I would love to get your expertise and sharing is like, where do I start? And
Yeah.
I always say, if you are aligned with the CSDM, even partially, like not everything, but if you have some alignment or if you understand the CSDM and you're on some sort of a journey, then you will get quicker value
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Yep. Yep. So I can share a few things on where you start and also maybe talk about, so I'm going to take over the sharing. Is that fine?
Yes.
All right. And I'm going to also talk about those portfolios for a minute too, because I get a lot of customers that ask for advice, right? How do I structure those enterprise portfolios exactly? And, just tell me how to do it and I'll just follow your advice. Well, and that's how CSDM came about, right? I mean, people were stuck trying to figure it out on their own. They just wanted somebody to tell them what to do. So here we go. This is CSDM, and really what it comes down to is when we're talking about what you just showed, you're bringing the business application together in DPM, the business service together in offering, right? So that's kind of together. The technical services, any of these, and then the offerings. So all of these are sort of included, and then the app service. So all the major components that connect the worlds together are there, which is kind of
Exactly.
cool. So this is sort of the core to everything, and of course underneath you have CIs, which is the CMDB, and I would say the physical world is down here, but what you're doing is sort of tackling this logical world that surrounds the physical world. This represents computers running in a data center and code running on those computers or in a cloud data center, right? This is really at that physical tier. The trick has always been, how do I manage or see it from different perspectives? So, but yeah, we're solving for that here.
And I would also like to say, we do include the dynamic CI group. So we kind of bucket that under the application service when we talk about what we surface, but we do have that included as like a type of app service view.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome because these infrastructure guys are managing infrastructure in what I call a fleet, right? It's just an inventory of stuff. They don't even know exactly how it's going to be used day to day. The context is really that app service, because what the server I allocated to a team today is going to be used for one thing, but they can, reallocate it and do something different with it, and it's now a different business consumer and different app service. So that accommodates their needs really nicely. So that's great. And how we get there, at least from a CSDM point of view, is when we're talking about this model, we actually start with this stuff down here. When you're bringing data in from a CMDB, or you want to know the location of a business consumer or who's subscribing from a location or user perspective, we have to get this foundation data right. And we have something called that crawl, walk, run, fly methodology. And this isn't cast in stone, but this is sort of where where customers get that breakdown. So start with that foundational data on the bottom, like the locations are right. So as you're starting to populate other information and referencing this information in here, it's right. It can be referenced, right? If you don't have locations, you can't reference it. The next stage is crawl, where we all, the reason that I like this approach is because it connects the development world early on. And this is very conceptual, right? What developers and teams are working on, to the logical world of what deployments do they have. You know, it goes back into your deployment conversation, or system or app service, whatever we want to call this. Right now, app services is what we're officially calling this. And then down here, the physical world, where you can inventory what's in the data center. So it starts to connect your architects, your app portfolio to a service type, you know, and then underlying infrastructure. But you can certainly start with other areas if you have a more mature service portfolio. You can kind of connect the dots from that point of view as well, earlier on.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're seeing a lot of is folks kind of working on the walk and crawl, you know,
Yeah,
to a degree. So it's kind of, again, depending on what the customer is using and what they already have or where they already have data. We are seeing quite a bit of work around the app services and building out those technical services and offerings,
yeah,
and having those be surfaced and viewed in DPM, you know, is a good starting point. And they don't have anything else. Like, they may not have their business apps yet, or they may not have their, you know, business services and offerings. And that's completely fine and
yep,
acceptable,
yep.
in how to get started, or
Well,
even
in a
where to
lot of,
stop.
yeah. Well, and I find that a lot of folks are trying to, you know, kind of like it's a game, right? They want to make sure they cover everything in CSDM. And I tell them, well, don't cover something if you're not using it, right? If you don't have enterprise architects looking at that portfolio, don't try to define them, because you have nobody to own and define and manage them.
Right.
You're sort of outside on a limb there. You're just going to create data with no real owner or use case using this data. Same thing here, technical services or business service. I know a lot of customers are trying to sort out business versus technical still, right?
Right.
What's the difference? Yeah, well, you know, we've defined now some guidance: technology, consumer versus business. But those are all kind of considerations in what you need to focus on first, second, third. This is just a standard way we've broken it down that people can start with, and then adjust based on where your maturity happens to be.
Yeah, and I would say, like, even within that, like, I love that point of, if you're not using something, or if you don't have the processes or the people in place to manage something, don't build it, because it will
Correct.
sit there and become stale and it'll be a waste of time. But also, like, you don't have to define every business service. You may
No.
just want to define your top 5 business critical business services, and then that's it.
Yep.
And you could
Yep.
build out the relationships to that particular service and offering, and that's also fine. You know, you don't have to say, okay, we're going to do our business services and we're going to do everything, because that can
That's right.
be so overwhelming.
Well, and you know, one of the things, the critical things, is to understand who the service owners are. And coming back to this picture, a lot of times the service portfolio was created by a service management team. So this was reflected of the queues of work that they happen to have to serve. But where's the service owner in the picture? They never really have established an ownership process, right? Where people come in, they own, they manage those things. A huge thing that DPM provides is sort of the place where they live, right? They can see the
Mhm.
stuff that they own. They can see how it relates to other things, how it's being consumed in a catalog and all the metrics. So now they have a place to go to do their work and to manage what it is they own. So
Exactly. And then, because a lot of times, either a service owner isn't identified, or they are, but a lot of customers will say to me, we have them, they just don't know the extent of their role. Like, we have this expectation, but we haven't really brought them in on it yet.
well, that's
They're only
exactly it.
focused on something.
Well,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. I mean, you know, what I find a lot of times is these services might be defined, but it's completely disconnected from anything running in a data center. And
Mhm.
therefore, how do you know what's really going on? You can get a ticket here, but then you're back in war rooms with 50 people in there trying to figure out what's really going on when the service is down. And if you don't have this level of detail, you're still troubleshooting things in the air on a phone call. um, so this, what I like about this model is that we can automate more and more because it is connected. So one of the things I talk about is if a server fails, look at all of the service application services that uses it, and then all of the business services offerings and all of the users impacted. You can be very precise in that communication and understanding who's impacted. But if you don't have that connection, forget it. You're just got a queue of tickets in there, and you're just gonna have to figure it out one by one what's really going on.
Exactly. And then, within on the DPM side is we're trying to visualize that relationship. So we're kind of trying to
Yeah,
bring this model to life
yeah,
and make it accessible to that service owner who isn't using ServiceNow today and they're
that's
not very
right.
comfortable with the ServiceNow platform as it
Yeah.
currently works.
Well, and the funny thing is, we don't usually have to get too many owners involved here. The app portfolio, usually, there's not so many owners, service owners. We're increasing the ownership as we go here, and getting further into the business is really how this is. Getting the IT Act in order, right, from the investment and creation of an app to what is it comprised of, to the technical teams, right? How are the technology teams, and what are their services? Who owns the platform? Because they're not talking to the business directly. They own the platform or the technology that underpins it, like the network services. And then eventually this becomes a lot more, robust, with having a business partner on the line and having this correctly identified.
Exactly.
It's part of CSDM to cover fly, and this is, like, I like to think about this as icing on the cake. Everything else before it is the meaty stuff, but things like business capability, information objects, these are more details that aren't necessarily needed early on, but you can certainly bring them in earlier on. A lot of folks, when they establish their business application portfolio, they'll have business capabilities and they'll do it back during crawl. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with mixing and matching these. You can start with run first if you have a pretty well defined business service. This is just guidance that tends to work with most of our customers, which is why we kind of provide here.
Yeah, and I'll add that a lot of times too, when I'm talking to customers, they'll actually sometimes have a catalog with all their catalog items pretty
Yeah,
well defined,
yeah,
and they can use that to almost back into what services they're providing.
yeah,
What do people request from them? What help do they provide? And then using that to inform some of the technical service and business service definition and what those offerings are, and then linking the catalog items to those offerings to get the visibility of where those requests are coming from and going to, and how's that service being provided ultimately.
yeah, absolutely. And I would definitely recommend bringing that into focus. I think I deal mostly with legacy customers that are just trying to sort this out and maybe never even establish the catalog for self-service. It's all like help desk over the phone, and they don't really expose the user interface for incident management to the users at all, right? So it really depends on the customer and what they do or don't do.
Absolutely. And what would your recommendation be? Because sometimes when I am talking to customers about, how to get started with DPM, or even like service portfolio management, it can be very overwhelming, especially
Yeah,
if you're a larger organization and you may have a lot of legacy records in your system. And so doing the cleanup and getting aligned can be quite daunting, especially
yeah,
when you're trying to provide services and then change how those services are provided or what's being provided, and keeping the service desk informed. And so, like, when I talk to customers, one of my recommendations is to start small in a certain area. So if you feel pretty comfortable about what technical services are being provided, or even what your top 5 or 10 business services are, because typically those are fairly well known and well
yeah,
defined because they are
yeah.
so business critical. Like, would you say it's fair where, hey, start with defining those 5 or 10, like get those pretty well built out, creating those relationships.
Yeah.
And that's a great starting point. And you can go, actually even just have that as a pilot or a POC or in production, and then slowly build that out. Is that a valid approach?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you're dealing with different teams in each of these phases. And sometimes it can be overwhelming, so you want to start with one team, then the next. But a lot of these can be done in parallel. And I'll give you an example. In the crawl stage, you're dealing with discovery here. So there's one team that deals with discovery, right? So at a very light level. Up here, you're dealing with EAs, portfolio managers, that sort of thing. So these are all different teams that can do this work, in parallel with service owners. Technical services owners tend to be your engineering teams that manage and provide things like network services or compute services, database services. So all of those underlying technologies, right, that underpin everything. And so a lot of times they're not even in the platform. They don't really set these services up, but it's getting those service owners, service managers or whatnot, right, in there so that they know what they own and how it connects down into the underlying discovered piece parts. And then simultaneously, you can get the business services. These remember, these are the engineering teams over here, but these are business relationship managers or folks that are facing, the different business units that are defining these business services and owning those. It's a different set of owners here. The service owners here are going to be kind of more higher level, not the technology teams, but more or less, how are those technologies used to do HR or to deliver product or to do sales? So those delivery teams are more higher level and usually there to report on what's going on from that service, from the underlying piece parts, basically. So there's a coordination between them, but you can certainly do them in parallel.
That's a really good point. And I think that when we did our session right on the service builder, and
Yeah.
one of the main goals with that was to allow or kind of put the power of defining those things in ServiceNow in the hands of the people who own those services.
That's
So like
right.
you said, yeah, you could have those owners who are working on those definitions and getting that sort of registered, if you will, in ServiceNow. And then if you have more of these technical teams creating the service maps and getting the underpinning technology defined and related to each other, the application service is that linchpin. And then you can connect it, ultimately when those things are built out, to the technical service offerings and to the business service offerings, and really start to see the map come together. But you certainly don't have to do that all, like you said, completely,
No.
or one stage, then the next stage, then the next stage. This can be something that you're building out and using at the same time. And it's perfectly acceptable. Like I say that with DPM all the time.
Yeah.
There's so much with it. There's so many, there's the full life cycles of business apps, services, offerings, and application services. And you don't need to do everything at once or even ever, ideally, right? To be able to use it.
That's right. That's right. The key thing here is to break it down based on your needs, your situation, and create sort of a roadmap like this where you're doing one thing, then the next, then the next. You're not trying to boil the ocean. It really depends on the capacity of the team, the engagement from those owners, the engagement from EAs, or even if you own discovery or icon visibility, if that's sort of on the table early on. But we do try to push the details there, because a lot of times people will define these business services, but they don't connect at all to what's underlying. And as a result, if you've got event management, you should be able to propagate those event metrics all the way up so you can report on things more automatically. But if you don't have those underlying details, you just can't do it. It's not an automatic process at all. It's all just what you process through the calls with those users.
Right. So like the more you do, the more you can define, the more you connect, the more visibility you get, and the more value you get But even just starting at a small place and getting some of these things defined is like that incremental value.
That's right. And the biggest challenge I would say in starting small, especially with an existing customer with already existing sort of, let's say they have business services defined and no technical service, but some of them are business technical services, so they should be migrated. So a lot of customers are sort of in a mixed bag. You know, they have stuff defined in the wrong way or different way than CSDM prescribes. And so the only, I would say, challenge for those customers is if they make those changes, and they start moving things around, they'll have to think about how incident management works or how change management works, because now the services may or may not be the same and they'll have to be changed as well. Those products have to be tweaked.
That's right. Exactly. The processes. And that I think
Yeah.
is one of the biggest hurdles with customers getting up and running with DPM is the reality that yes, you need to define these entities and you need to connect them to each other to be able to get that broader visibility, and really understand, you know, what you're providing and how you're providing it.
Yeah.
But then if you don't have your incident management process, for example, aligned in such a way that you're referencing the service offering and the service,
Yes,
you can't see that in DPM.
that's right. And one of the things that a lot of folks don't even know is that there are properties in incident management that you have to tweak in order to turn that on. We cover that in the CSDM lab, but most folks aren't even aware until they take the lab or they look a little deeper in the incident management to know where to go.
I feel
So
like we should give them a little sneak peek.
yeah, so let's show that off here real quick. Okay, so this is my personal instance here, and what you got to do to enable those advanced incident properties is come over here, go to incident, and there's incident properties under administration. So I think it's right here is where I want to go. But if I go to incident properties, you've got all of these attributes. And if I scroll down to the bottom of this attribute list, you'll see I enabled mine. But the incident related properties list here, so you've got things like populate impacted services based on effective CIs. This basically leverages the application services, okay? So that's the path to get from the service to the CIs and back again. So without this, you can't analyze all the services from each CI that might be the source of the incident and see all the potential services that could be impacted, because one network device can affect, you know, a dozen services, for example, through these app services.
Yeah, so really quick, just to say that back to you to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. When like in the configuration item field on the incident form, if you
Yeah.
list an application service in that field,
Yeah.
And this property is enabled, then in the impacted services related list, this property will basically automatically populate that list with services related to that application service.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me show you on the diagram real quick what that's doing. So coming back to CSDM real quick. So let me go full screen. So what that's doing is if the incident form has the CI selected down here, okay? So this is the CI on the form. This is the lowest level detail that you can get to. What it does is that when you analyze impacted services, that CI might be part of many application services, and then that might be in turn part of many offerings and services within the service management space, right? So there could be 12 of these, maybe there's 4 of these. So, you know, it kind of splays out really quickly, that one-to-many sort of situation, and you're able to identify all the services impacted by one CI failure. Why that's really cool is because each of these services here might have both different locations or different users or different business units that are subscribers. And so you can get the full inventory of the impact by leveraging CSDM in this way. And that's the feature to turn it on which if you go to an incident form, which I'll do that real quick. So this is the incident property to turn on. Let's just pull up in another view here. Hold on a minute. Duplicate. Let's actually look at incidents, and let's look at all of them. So I think we could just go to all here and just bring one up. I'm just basically bringing up something from our demo data. So if I choose a configuration item, in this case, OSG series, whatever that is, right? This happens to be the incident. Down here, the impacted services CIs would be populated when you run the impact analysis process. Now, to do that, I think we've already done this. I think this might be. Yeah, I'm not sure where to refresh that. Maybe that's not the right form. Jeez. Refresh impacted services. So this refresh impacted services will do the analysis through that CSDM model to identify every single service impacted by that CI, because that's been the lowest level thing identified. And there may be many impacted services that get populated in this list when you refresh that impacted services. That does the analysis for you. I don't think my data is set up to show that, but let's say those 12 are related, they would all be listed here.
That's so cool. And then would that also work if someone, say, opened it against the application service directly in the CI field? It would still run that. It's just, it doesn't have to look at the app services first.
That's right. And that's one of the things that I recommend customers do, is that for the configuration item, they don't allow the offering or service to be pulled in here. This is something a lot of folks don't go through the effort of maybe tweaking the configuration here, and what we call primary CIs, or I think it's primary CIs. I'll have to go back and look. But there's a suggested way of looking at only certain CIs when you go to choose the configuration item. You don't want to choose CIs that are outside the hardware, software, and then application services at the lowest level. So that's kind of, I don't have it all set up here, but that's kind of how that would work.
Got it.
And then the offering and service. So you might come in at the service level, restrict the number of offerings that you choose from, and then the number of CIs underneath those offerings, and vice versa. If you choose the configuration item first, the number of offerings and services related to that configuration item can be restricted based on this CSDM model. And that's what the CSDM lab takes customers through, how to do that, how to make that work in that way. But more and more of these CSDM capabilities are being built into the product, which is on that properties tab that we were reviewing here.
And one additional thing that's really cool is we have expanded our reporting model in DPM. And so we were getting a lot of feedback that when you, right now, or I should say before our 3.0 release in DPM, we would show the incidents related to a service offering when the service offering was directly listed on the incident form in that field that we were just showing. What we've done, however, is we've expanded that reporting model to show the incident on a service offering when that offering is listed in the impacted services or even the affected CIs related lists. And the reason why we did that was customers were saying, oftentimes it's not just one, not just one offering or one service that's being impacted, or needs to address the issue. And so what we've done is we've made that enhancement, and we've shipped that in our 3.1. And so with the property enabled, you just get a much richer experience through your incident process and in DPM.
Yeah. And really, if this is a user calling in, they're going to have a specific service that they're experiencing problems on. But obviously, if the root cause is a CI that impacts many, you're going to have to account for that. And that's where this stuff has to be blinked out, because it's not only one, right? And that's where this kind of comes in, where you have multiples listed.
Exactly.
And then, The other thing I wanted to show you on the incident properties form that I've got configured here is populate the business applications related list for incidents. So the same sort of thing happens up through a different path where the business application list can be added to that form as well. And then, so if let's say that is a server, again, you have, let's say, multiple app services that the server is used in, and then multiple business applications. What we can do is list all of the business applications using this path as well. Remember, this is optional. You don't really need to use this, but this direct path exists in the system, and APM uses this pretty heavily. And by using this property here, populate the business application related list, and enabling that related list on the form, which isn't there by default, this would be populated as well.
Yeah, that's great, because we do surface the incident count for business applications in DPM as well. And so then you kind of see what things are impacting that particular business app.
Yeah, and that gets populated at the same time when you do refresh impacted services. If this is enabled, it will also impact, show you the apps there as well. It'll just run that extra step.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
So again, another little hidden gem there that follows CSDM and incident that nobody knows about. Yeah, and this is the last one. I think you mentioned this, is they populate the service offering related list for incidents too. So again, if you're using the offering, this starts to bring that into play on the form and how it's used for incidents. And it's critical because that's where SLA, OLA commitments and all that are stored. Also subscribers. What I'm really looking for is if enough customers get to the point where they're using all this, then we can really leverage subscribers on this and even list out or message every person, that is involved in any service offering that's defined in the system, no matter what the incident scope is.
Exactly. And then you can help to deflect new incidents coming in, for the same issues, because you've already been able to inform everyone who is being impacted.
That's right. What I hate the most in large organizations is getting spammed about something being down that I don't use or care about, right? It's okay, that's interesting, but I'm not a user of that system. Why am I getting that email, right? It's
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads us to some of the product centric thinking we need to have in defining services and applications at the same time, but we'll cover that in a separate session.
Can you show the Foundation's dashboard? Because this, I feel, is such a critical and helpful tool for, of course, the CSDM, but also really for customers who are interested in using DPM. Like one of the, of course, where do I get started? Yeah. How do I use DPM? Why is this information not showing up? Or why is this blank? A lot of times, it's because the data isn't in the right place or isn't connected in the right way. And what that the Foundation's dashboards do is, I think, really help to give visibility into what is missing.
Yeah, we just posted a video on these, but I'll take you through these in a very brief manner, just to kind of explain. These are available in the store. You can just go to the store, search for Data Foundations, you'll find them, and they're free. There's no cost to this at all. And these are very prescriptive in nature, which is we define the metrics and the logic to generate those metrics, and we apply them to every instance in the same way. The out-of-the-box health dashboards, on the other hand, are very highly tailored and highly customizable. So there is no consistency, but these are really something we ship, and we don't allow customers to change this at this point. And there's two of them. There's two portions of the dashboard. There's the CMDB portion and the CSDM portion. So let's take a quick look at CMDB first, because that's sort of the basics, belt strap and suspenders, that sort of thing, where anybody that has CIs, you should be looking at this CMDB portion, because this tells you where the basics aren't being taken care of. And what you see here is a series of tabs where we group those metrics and a prioritization of each of those metrics and what the metric is here. And there's a remediation playbook on how to fix these things, some suggestions on root causes and where to go to fix things. And so this is just basic hygiene on the data, the quality itself. There's really not much to do with other, CSDM in this section altogether. We also look at customizations, because if you're highly customized, you won't be able to leverage a lot of the out of the box stuff that we provide. Most customers are trying to get more out of the box, so to speak. So these are and some analysis on various things so we can detect on customization levels. Data management practices are here. Whether the folks are bringing in data through the IRE, which deals with reconciling with existing records, that helps to deal with duplicates. And if they are duplicates, are you handling them? So these are all just basic hygiene stuff that should exist no matter what, whether you're using CSDM or not. And the last one is kind of interesting. We're starting to organize the metrics per business unit and product set. So in this case, going back to what we just looked at, do we have changes and incidents referencing CIs? And if we don't, this will show up in the metrics. This means that if you've got processes that don't really connect down into the CI level data, right, for incident management, this will show a poor metric. But if you do, of course, you get 100%.
Yeah, and I think this is really telling as well, very similar to what we were talking about, where incidents relating to both a CI and a service, where you are like, you and I have spoken about this before, but best practice being, it's really important to say which service is being affected or impacted and have that documented. But if you can get as granular as possible on where that is occurring, then like you said, you can also get the broader, bigger assessment of impact.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what this comes down to. Are you actually doing both? Of course, it's lower here because you may not be doing both in some cases. So yeah, this is as we work to evolve our prescribed way of doing things, and everybody's using CSDM, these will improve. And this, I think we call this, this is a little different. This predates CSDM, to be honest. This is what do we call it? Service. It's the operational connected service management or something like that. I can't remember how we used to call that. Do you remember?
I do not.
Yeah, but basically this connects the service management practice to the CMDB, configuration management practice. So the other portion of the dashboard is CSDM, and when we come in here, we show the same kind of metrics, right? Same structures where we prioritize them, but we align this with the crawl, walk, run, fly implementation methodology. And here you'll see metrics based on the foundation data itself. Do you have product models? Do you have location hierarchies set up? And then so you got to get this stuff done first. Not every possible thing is in here, just the stuff what we find is more critical and easy to capture metrics on. Some stuff it's really hard to get metrics on, so, or it's expensive to run the process to generate the metrics, but we do what we can. And then as you walk up to crawl, walk, run, fly, here in crawl, this is where we connect the things like business applications to app services. App services are using the right relationship. So as we have experience with customers that may or may not have followed CSDM, these are the metrics that'll help them align, use the right relationship types, and we expect to see them if they've got applications they need to be connected to app services and vice versa.
Yeah, and a really good first step might be like when you're assessing DPM and where to get started and how you might want to use it. I would recommend coming here. And like you said, it's free. It'll be, reflecting the status of your current instance. You can look to see, where you are actually having that good data. Like, is it crawl? Is it walk? Is it run? Is it fly? Where are the relationships, or where do they not exist? And then, potentially start with what you do have, and then continue to build this stuff out. And then the cool thing is, the more aligned you are with the CSDM, obviously the more value you get, but also the more you can see in DPM. And then DPM kind of becomes a window into your journey with cleaning up your CMDB and aligning to that prescribed best practice data model.
That's right. And this is a good example, this metric right here, app services missing a business app relationship. So if you're using DPM to look at business application data, in this case, you've got a whole bunch of app services that have no connection. So those metrics aren't popping up, right, in DPM, because you're expecting this to be related, and that data will use that relationship.
Exactly. And then if you know which ones are, so if you do have a couple of business applications that do have that relationship,
Yeah,
you can focus on getting those set up and getting the data right for those particular apps, because likely they're, more critical since you've done the work to make those connections, and you can start managing those in DPM and getting value there. And then again, as you continue to make the relationships, you see more and more and more, built out, and more owners and teams can come into DPM and use it and manage and view their solutions, through that end-to-end life cycle.
that's right. That's right. And what we're looking at here again is just this relationship between the business app going this way, and then the vice versa check is, you got app services that may not be connected at all. That's our major issue that we're identifying here. So lots of app services, but what are they deployments of? I don't know. So,
Yeah.
and then of course, as we go up to walk, this is really leveraging the technical service aspects. So if you look at the technical services, do you have the offerings with support groups and change groups established? Do you have offerings referencing technical services? Are you using dynamic CI groups? Dynamic CI groups was added because of the dynamic nature of CIs in an automated process where people are deploying and decommissioning resources like virtual servers, for example, automatically. So this dynamic CI group is really an important aspect of defining what those services are when you're deploying and defining, getting them connected down into the CI level detail.
And we do surface the dynamic CI group in DPM.
Okay.
And so a few customers that I've spoken with recently, they are starting with their technical services, the technical service offerings, and then the relationships to those app services and dynamic CI groups.
Excellent.
As their entry into DPM. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, and we've been sort of slow with adding a lot more metrics here again too, because not everybody is using CSDM or separated out using technical versus business services. But as we go, we'll continue to add more, checks and balances to this dashboard.
Exactly. And like to call out, we spoke about this on our service builder conversation, but these queries are looking at those dedicated tables, correct? So it's actually looking to see that you're populating your services in the dedicated technical service and dedicated business service tables.
Yes.
And so that is we do in DPM, we do surface services in any of the tables. So the CMDB CI service, like that core base table, plus the new service tables. But we really do recommend getting into those dedicated tables, because I think the experience is better, and it's a good opportunity to really clean up what services you have in those tables and the level of detail that you're providing.
That's a good point. That's probably something we can add to this dashboard as well, because we can easily count how many services are in the base table. So we have this right here. We've got we're pretty much, what this metric means is that we're okay. We don't have any services in the base table. They're all in their dedicated tables, right? In this instance, but many of our customers, that is not the case. They've used the base table from day one, and they have never really moved into the dedicated tables.
Yes, and it's hard to clean up, a table that you've had around for forever. So the really nice thing I think about those dedicated tables is it's a way to get a fresh start and only put services in those tables that are still being used, that have the right information, that aren't duplicates or obsolete anymore. Like it's a really good opportunity to really clean house in that area.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this will provide sort of the guidance on how to fix this. One of the things we try to do is keep these remediation playbooks, these are knowledge articles, up to date with the latest tools available and what to do about these findings, right? If this is really bad, I go to the playbook and it'll say, hey, you know what? You're not using Service Builder. We recommend using this. This puts the data in the right tables, right? So this is kind of what the playbook's all about.
Yeah, I love that you do have the playbook, because not only do you see the score, but it's like, okay, well, what do I do about that now? I think that's really cool that you have the playbooks.
Yeah. And then, you know, you got to run, you're dealing with a different set of service types there for, why is this not refreshing? That's weird. That's good. Let's go back to run. I think that's what I was showing anyway. Was it? Yeah, I was showing run.
Oh yeah,
but it was highlighting walk, which is really weird. Something
Oh.
bizarre. Yeah. So I was really confused. And then fly is when you get into fly, and then there's a lot of folks don't have maturity in this area, but this is you know, what we expect to do there. Again, we'll keep adding more metrics, but we as customers tend to get to these levels of maturity.
It's a really good starting point.
Maybe we just wrap up with my instance of DPM just to kind of bring it all back home.
Yeah.
And looks like I do have a personal portfolio defined, so I can just click on that, get to it, right? Yeah, so yeah, DPM gets lit up more and more as you define that data model that underpins it. And of course, the metrics will roll up, all the other products that you use around in these different phases, plan, build, run, risk, you know, for GRC, all that will get lit up as a result of connecting the dots of the underlying data model that CSDM prescribes.
That's right. And the other thing I wanted to call out is similar to how you can ease into the CSDM approach. And I have touched on this with getting started with DPM, where you don't have to do all of your services or all of your business applications or all of your application services at the same time. You can like slowly roll out different types or even segments of types, you know, based on what's well defined already. The other thing though is you don't have to start with every single tab. So the other thing that we do, and I'll speak to this very quickly so we can wrap it up, is you can actually hide the plan, build, run, and risk tabs with a system property. So we have pages that we've created within DPM. It's in our admin section, and we have system property pages per type. Okay, so yeah, within the digital portfolio management product section in the platform, if you scroll all the way down under administration, we have multiple system property pages. If we go to the business application property page, here you'll see we have different types of properties that you can turn on and off, and you can turn them on and off as many times as you want, which is great because it allows you to start with a particular phase of the life cycle or particular types of content, and then you can add them back in later if you want. So there's no, you know, restrictions here, but ultimately, and I'll just click here so we can edit it, but ultimately we have lifecycle configuration. So this will hide specific tabs. So I'll just show, for example, we can hide the plan tab. And then in the content configurations, this is basically sections on the tabs. So here you can see hide summary, which is on the plan tab. But let me hide something on the build tab. So let's see, I'll hide projects on the build tab. And so if I go up and if I save this page now, and I go into my workspace and I go to a business application, the plan tab will be hidden. So you can see now I just have build, run, risk. And then on the build tab, you'll notice I hid the projects section. So that's no longer showing up between the roadmap and the epics.
Interesting. You know what would be really cool about this, just, you know, just gonna expressing my thoughts behind this, is like when you're a new customer and all these other products exist within the platform, right? We have PPM, but people may not even know about it or realize it, right? It's this initial setup, you know, almost like educates our customers on, you know, everything full blast on. You've got these things out there. You can record epics. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, yes, go over to this product team and buy that product, right? Or bring that data in from your existing sources. So that's really cool.
Definitely. Yes. It's sort of, this is the art of the possible. Here are all the different
Yeah.
things that you can track and manage. And by the way, this is not complete, right? We could do
Yeah.
way more than what we're doing now, and we'll continue to add to it. But it is a good, visual of what you can do. And then, like I said, you can start small. So a lot of customers that I talk to, they're starting with their technical services and offerings and just run. So they're just looking at run data, and they've hidden the plan and build tabs.
Yeah.
And then their plan is to turn those tabs back on once they get the data aligned, or once they start to actually use those products. So it is meant to be used in part, and then ultimately in full, if customers can get there and have that desire.
Yeah. Very cool. I like it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks. I think this has been a pretty comprehensive session to discuss CSDM and digital portfolio management. I think this will help out customers better have an understanding of how DPM fits and uses CSDM, and some of the other things like our methodology, our dashboards, how to set up some things like incident management to leverage it more. But this has been a really nice session, I think, to cover a lot of bases. So.
Absolutely. And then we can dig into other areas in more depth later as well. So thanks
Yeah,
so much for the opportunity to, Mark. This is great.
sure thing. And definitely we'll be revisiting this, especially as we continue to grow our dashboards or CSDM, next versions, or DPM. I know you're coming out with changes every quarter, right? So I just updated my instance, by the way, so get the latest. I've been using version 2 on my demo. So yeah, you guys are moving pretty quick.
Yeah, that's the idea. We're trying to iterate quickly. It's not perfect. We know it's not perfect, and we'll continue to try to make it better and better each time.
Excellent. That's one of the things I love about ServiceNow, but boy, it's like I've always got 3 releases I got to be concerned about. The one we just released, the one we're working on now, and then the one after that we're planning. So there's always 3 in mind.
Exactly. There's no time or no rest for the weary, right?
No, not at all, but it's fun. It makes things interesting, and it's really exciting to be here for this.
It sure does. Cool.
All right. Thank you.